Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Shirley Talk. I am Mike Mulrooney, and today we got an empty seat. Kelly's not here with us. She's on a much-needed vacation. I was telling somebody earlier she's got so many friends that everybody invites her to a free vacation on the beach. So she's out having a good time, and she will be back next week. So today we have Miss Mary Vincent and Noah Vincent in today. Thank you all for coming in.
Thank you.
And we're going to talk about Noah's cancer. And we were talking before the show started. I thought you were older when you were diagnosed with cancer, and that's not the case. So how old were you when you were, it was leukemia, right?
Mm-hmm. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia.
I don't know where they get these names.
I don't either.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. And you said you were 3?
I was, it was 2 years, 11 months was the actual diagnosis.
So you weren't even walking then, I guess, huh? Or close to it, or maybe toddling around a little?
Well, technically, no, he wasn't. We were having trouble getting him to walk. He was walking at 2, but he wasn't potty training well.
Yeah.
And that in lies started some issues because it all just kind of started then.
So as a mom, you started seeing things like that and starting to wonder if something may have been going on that wouldn't be considered normal?
He was in Mother's Day out and was perfectly fine and running and jumping and playing and climbing. And then almost instantly after Easter in 2000, April of 2000, he just started limping. And I would ask him what was wrong, and he would say, my leg. He wasn't talking near as much as he does now, but he wouldn't say much. He would just say, my leg. And it got worse. We would go to the doctor, and it got worse, and nothing showed up. Nothing happened. They do blood work. They thought he might have an infection, and it just went on and on for months. And as it went on, he went from limping to just not walking.
Really?
Yes.
So was it his knee, his foot, his thigh? I mean, did they know why or what was going on with the leg?
When it happened, it started in April, and I took him to the doctor immediately, and he was x-rayed, and nothing showed up in his leg or his hip because it was more of a limp.
So they're thinking fracture or sprain or something like that.
Right. He did something outside. He fell. Nothing happened in April. May came along. Pretty much the same thing, but it got progressively worse. At the end of May, he started running a fever just on a Friday, and I took him to the child on a Poplar level at the time. It was like the aftercare, and his doctor was there, and he blasted me for not bringing him to the doctor's office, which he had been numerous times, and nothing had been found in his blood work. They had even done the x-ray and said nothing showed up. So this little 2.5-year-old fell in the floor out of my husband's arms and was rocking, dying, mama dying. And I lost it because, it was just horrible. So I made the decision myself to take him straight to Kosare. And
they've done, at this point, they've done all these tests.
Everything.
And nothing came back.
They even,
you were laying on the floor thinking you were dying as a 2.5-year-old.
I don't remember much, but I remember sometimes it was rough.
Really?
It was very rough.
So this was before any treatments or anything started.
Yeah, it was all pain.
So they didn't think to send you all to a secondary or a second. No. We talk about this a lot, and a lot of times people don't always get second opinions because they have so much faith and confidence in their doctors. And at this point, you've had it. Something's going on, and they have no idea what it is.
Well, it was consistent. Like I said, it was just out of the blue, and then it was consistent. And then they even aspirated some of his fluid from his hip. Nothing showed up. And then the end of May, we ended up in the hospital with the fever, and I'll never forget, the infectious disease doctor told me that there was nothing wrong with him, that, nothing showed up. There wasn't anything in his blood, and on. And I pretty much got right in his face because he was about my height. And I said, you're wrong, and I'll be seeing you again. And that next 2 weeks later, on June the 13th, he ended up we took him, like I said, to the immediate care. And I mean, he was a mess, just fell out that he was dying. And they did numerous tests that whole week, and pokes and sticks and scans. And they literally couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. And they told us on about the 5th day that they thought he might have a bone cancer, and nothing. So Father's Day weekend, June of 2000, we did find out that Saturday that he had cancer, but we had no idea what kind. And that was just a sucker punch.
So this is a couple months into it. This
Yes.
young man, his little kid at the time, was going through all this trouble. You know, one thing that makes me so mad is I don't understand at some point, why are they not testing for cancer? We all know that if you catch it early enough, in most cases, it's curable. But why is it insurance related? Is it doctor related? Is it?
It's absolutely
I get frustrated
insurance related.
because they should have tested. They should have tested that immediately to see if that's what. So I wonder what it was that finally got them to test for leukemia.
When he was in the hospital from Monday until, actually he was in the hospital for 2 weeks subsequently, but when he went in the first time, that June day that I'll never forget, he was screaming bloody murder. We couldn't put him down. It was just, his fever was terrible. It was awful. They did all these tests, and that Thursday they decided to go in and see if they could get some of his bone marrow through his hip bone, because that's where, when they did the scans, he lit up like a Christmas tree, his hips and his tailbone, not his legs. So it was actually his hip and his legs, the hip and his tailbone that was affected. So they knew that something was going on. They knew he had something at that point. And at that point, when they tested it, it came up that it was cancer. But it wasn't until the following week, more pokes, more sticks. They did an aspiration in his hip that was just excruciating to see and watch when he was fully awake. And then that determined that he had leukemia.
Wow.
And the doctor that was in my face and that told me there was nothing wrong came in the room with all of my family members and apologized and said next time he would pay more attention to the mother.
Yeah, he could have cost a kid his life. And it worries me that, you know, we all have bad days, but if a doctor has a bad day, that's a life. It could turn out bad. It could have really been bad.
Yeah.
So when they finally found it, did they determine a stage? I don't know if they even do stages anymore, but in 2000, they were doing stages. Was he early enough that they felt like obviously he was going to be successful with the treatments?
It was so early, it wasn't in his blood yet. It was still in his bone marrow.
Okay.
So because leukemia, the type that he had of the 4 childhood, there's 2 of the acute lymphoblastic, like he said. He had the most curable and most treatable. Not only that, it's cancer of the blood. That's what leukemia is. And his wasn't in his blood. That was all the blood tests and all. They're not going to be able to tell it by a scan. And it wasn't in his blood. So literally, the only way that they found it was to go in through his tailbone and get a piece of his bone marrow.
Yeah, and actually dissect it. So you obviously probably don't remember any of that.
Not much.
Yeah.
I really don't.
I mean, don't remember the pain or the treatments or anything that you went through?
I remember my spinal taps. That was probably honestly the worst thing I remember.
Yeah.
Getting curled up in a ball and a needle shoved in my back.
I was thinking they've gotten much better with those these days because I've heard that is horrendous. But as a little person, I just, you know, as a mom or a dad standing there, and you might realize this one day, and we'll get to that part, but having kids, sitting there and watching them suffer and knowing there's nothing you can do about it is god awful. It really is.
Yep.
So once they diagnosed, what did they do back then? Did they start ports? Did they start chemo? What did they do?
He was diagnosed technically on June the 19th. He had his port put in 3 days later and had a chemo treatment before he ever left the hospital. He started chemo immediately. He had chemo once a month in his port that he named Charlie.
Still got it. It's
Well,
on the
that's
shelf.
interesting because there's a baby named Charlie fighting cancer right now. If you've ever seen that Facebook
I have,
page,
yes.
yeah. And but it's horrible to see the
It's
little ones
terrible.
like that. So how bad did it make him? You know, having little kids is tough because at that age they're running around playing, and you know they're toddlers. They're climbing steps. I mean, did it have that kind of effect on him where he wasn't mobile?
No, not really. He was
I remember some of the times me and Dad played foosball table. I'd always be going and carrying around my little walker
pack.
thing. Yeah, my pack. It didn't keep me down when I was little.
Yeah, you know, kids are pretty resilient as long as they can keep the sickness from going away. But I guess at some point at early ages, you just don't know any different, really, other than I got to go get stuck again today.
Yeah.
But yeah, kids are a little more resilient. But as a parent, it's got to be tough to sit there and watch that.
Well, Charlie would have to go get a drink.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we did. Charlie would go get a drink once a month. So once a month, Charlie would get a drink.
That's creative.
And there was cream that we would put on the port so that he wouldn't feel the needle, because it was a horrible needle that went inside his chest, but he didn't feel it. And then he took chemo pills every day, 7 days a week. He took a chemo once a month. The spinal taps were every 3 months. So before he was probably 5 years old, he had 15 spinal taps.
And they just drill into the bone, I guess.
Just drill right straight into the bone, because they would actually give him medication to calm him down, which we found out that Benadryl does not do that for him.
Yeah, it has a reverse reaction.
It has a
Yeah.
reverse reaction. He
Yep.
was literally climbing the walls. They would give him a cocktail. And if you've never seen
Bourbon.
I wish.
might have been better for me if I would have had one.
Yeah.
They would give him a cocktail of something to calm him down, something for his nerves, something for pain. And then we would just ball him up. And the worst part was afterwards, because I called it the good, the bad, and the ugly. When he first got the cocktail, he loved everybody. When he was coming down off the cocktail, it was rough. And, you know, I would have to take somebody with me because he would get sick. And then when we got home, he was just a terror. He was just coming down off all that. It was like having a drug addicted child for a few hours. But that was the hardest part, you know, just not being able. After he would get his chemo treatment and his port, we'd go to McDonald's. I mean, he really didn't have any effects from the medication or anything like that. We got very lucky.
At least short-term effects. It's the long-term effects that we're concerned about at this point.
The long-term effects have showed over the past few years, and he still has to go to the doctor. And, you know, we found out some things recently. And it's when you're going through it, you don't think about that. I didn't think about when he was 10 and 14. And
You just want the disease to go away.
Yeah.
I just want him cured.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly right.
So how long did you all have to go through those treatments? Was it a year, 2 years, 6 months?
He went through treatment from his first treatment was June 22nd of 2000 until August 6th of 2003. So
Holy
for 3
smokes.
straight years. Yes.
Yeah.
So how do you get a kid at that age to say, oh, we're going to the doctor to put a needle in your back again? I mean, what did you Did you have to do something to get him in the car? I mean, my son he's 12 and won't take pills. He can't swallow them. And you said he had pills and stuff he had to take. How did you make that happen?
I was very creative.
I was going to
I
say,
was
how
about to
did
say,
you do
she
that?
had to be creative. I remember some of the stuff they would put in a syringe, some kind of medicine, and I hated taking it so bad. She would bribe me with different stuff, like you could lay on the couch for this long if you take it.
Yeah. Extra
Just-
cartoons
yeah.
or something. Yeah. Of course, you grew up in the 24/7 cartoon generation. We only
Cartoon
got
Network.
to watch cartoons on Saturday morning, so and there was nothing to record them with either. So,
SpongeBob.
but
and
yeah, getting a little one to take medicine like that had to be horrible.
I had to crush it. I had to dissolve it, and I put it in a syringe. And a lot of times I used flavoring. But laying all jokes aside, he would, I guess because I didn't make it be bad, and I didn't, you know, you got to take your medicine again, or, you know, I made it be like it was
Fun time.
you know,
Yeah.
and I would take a shot or something. It wasn't anything.
Medicine for Noah, bourbon for Mom.
I would, you know, even if I just did the flavoring, you know, we would both at the same time, you know, and I just kind of made it, I mean, it was every day for 3 years. I mean, we had to do this every day. I couldn't miss a pill. I couldn't miss anything. And I had a big, gigantic wipey board on my refrigerator of every time he took a pill, of every time he ate, which during the week of the steroid, trust me, he could eat, everything he did when he went to the bathroom, if he didn't go to the bathroom, if he had a fever, and a fever automatic go to the hospital.
So. I see that quite a bit because the fever can spike instantly on patients like that.
Yeah.
So you did this for a couple years, and he's 5, almost 6. I mean, how did school go? Was you in kindergarten with other kids, or did you stay home? I mean, at what point?
They kept me home.
Did they?
Yeah, I know. Bunch of my buddies, my neighbors, they all went to the same school, and they graduated a year before me. And I just kind of looked at it. It's kind of a blessing. But
yeah. So you didn't start first grade or kindergarten till 7, I guess?
He went through pre-K twice because we actually had signed him up the summer that he was supposed to start when he was diagnosed. So he had to wait because he couldn't be around children. And, I think people don't realize
because of his immune system?
Because of his immune system. It wasn't really because of them. It was because of him. He couldn't be around somebody that had a cold or the flu. The main thing was because he couldn't have any vaccinations like the chicken pox or anything like that. So he went through pre-K twice. And then he started, he turned 6, had his last chemo, and started kindergarten all the same week.
Wow, that's a goal right there, Amon. So did it at that age? I mean, kids are brutal, and you hear cancer patients, kids that go to school that have lost their hair and things like that. Did you have any of those issues? Did you lose your hair at that age? Do you remember?
Yeah.
I just wonder what the kids said to you. I mean, did you talk to the teachers before he got there and just, how did that go? Because kids are brutal. I've seen stuff that they say and not realizing that somebody had been through what you have and they just don't know.
Honestly, thinking about school and stuff like that, I was just talking to my girlfriend now a couple days ago about that question, and honestly, nobody really even
said anything.
Yeah, it's kind of, some people would ask like how I went through it and stuff like that, but nobody really brought it up. That's
good.
Good thing. Yeah, it's a really good thing.
Yeah,
especially a generation nowadays.
Oh yeah, it's insane how people act. But over the years, you had what your mom probably thought, had issues learning and things like that. So, and it sounds like, a lot of people don't understand chemo brain. And obviously that's probably, I would assume that's what it was, but you really struggled over the years with learning things. Is that correct?
Yeah. I was about to say, I like to talk. I get it from my mom, but other than that, school was hard. Yeah. It was very, very hard. Memory and stuff like that. Memory and math and basic knowledge like that, it was pretty tough.
Did the teachers give you a hard way to go?
Some did.
Yeah.
And that's
but they didn't know your history.
No.
Do you ever bring that up with teachers as he was going through school about
I
what he went through?
absolutely did. Yes.
And make sure that they know that there could be some, but you probably weren't aware of it either, that the drugs that he went through would have such a long-term effect.
Absolutely not. I mean, I think when he was 3, I didn't think about when he was 13. And when he was 13, I really kind of forgot about what he went through when he was 3 because he didn't have a lot of problems. He didn't come out of remission. He was the chosen child at pre-K. They just adored him, and it didn't matter that he was sick. But now that he was going through, 4th grade and he wasn't doing his homework, and I didn't think about, well, maybe he doesn't study well, or maybe he doesn't remember. It wasn't until he was a junior in high school that we realized exactly the chemo brain.
Well, I was going to say, most people, all right, the medicine is probably out of your system since it was 3, and you should be fine now. And there's no reason to think that those medications had any long-term effect, but that's not true. They have major long-term effects on people.
Yeah.
So when he was a junior, it took that long for people to really say, hey, this might be what's happening?
Yes. I tried to get him tested before he went through private grade school and was going on to Butler.
Yeah.
And tried to get him tested, but they didn't think that he needed it. They thought he just didn't study enough. I mean, this was someone who didn't know him, judged him by some paperwork that we filled out from his other school because I wanted to get him tested because I knew that he was going to struggle and I just didn't know why. So on to Butler he went, and he struggled ninth grade, and he had to go to summer school twice. So I knew, I mean, when we were, and it wasn't that he struggled so much that he couldn't learn. It was just him and I were just at each other because I felt like he wasn't studying enough. But I could tell the older that he got that it wasn't just that there was something else going on. And we were fortunate enough to get him tested. And I mean, it was a big, long explanation, some medical terms, some just general terms that his learning had been delayed. His memory, he has a short-term memory issue, not severe at all, but enough to where when you're trying to learn math and you stop when you're in the 4th grade, that was really the kicker. And I mean, I'm not talking about it. Everybody knows about it. Noah has been not very honest about it. And trust me, every teacher that he ever had from the time he was in the 1st grade until the 11th grade knew about the results of this.
Yeah, but being in a private school, it's more family oriented and everybody knows one another, and the teachers there were probably aware and didn't bring it to your attention. You know, when you go to public school, it's a total different environment, and everybody there is friendly, and I'm not talking that, but you don't have the same family feel to where teachers would understand and know a little bit about what every kid has been through. So it's a different environment.
Extremely different.
Do you remember how they tested you for that? I mean, how did they test and realize that something was a problem from when you were 3?
Well, when we did the test in junior year in high school, I remember going downtown to, I can't remember what building, and they would put me through different scenarios. Like they would read off a sentence and tell me to repeat it forward and backwards.
Oh, okay.
And then they would do a bunch of math problems and stuff like that. And most of it was common knowledge, and there were some hard ones on there, which I'm not the smartest with everything on it, but they would do just different basic knowledge, stuff like that.
And you just couldn't remember the stuff.
No. Some of the stuff, like they would give me like a phone number and tell me to read it to them, or they would read it to me, I'd read it back to them.
Did you tell them in my day I don't have to remember phone numbers? I got them in my phone.
Yeah.
We had to memorize that stuff in our day. So
No, it was tough. Some of the questions, it probably would have, everybody in the room probably would have been thrown off on it. But
yeah,
some of this stuff was basic knowledge that I didn't even know.
Wow.
So it was tough, frustrating.
So you went through many years of people just thinking you're a bad kid and not doing your work.
I wasn't saying I'm an angel.
Well, yeah. Well, that's good that
I
you admit that.
I like to talk,
yeah.
but it was tough on some stuff. Yeah.
It was just memory loss.
Yeah, it was very tough.
So at that point, did the school lighten up a little bit when they realized that there was something from a long time ago?
Yeah. They helped out a lot. They would put me
because I think Butler has a special unit to help kids with extra problems or something.
No, it wasn't really that. I would do normal daily basis, but like on tests, some people would have to do 60, I'd have to do 40.
Okay.
So when they would put me in a different classroom, they would help me out more, but I'd still be on a daily average basis with everybody. But it just, some of the stuff was kind of summoned down.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, it's still testing your knowledge, but not to the extreme.
Yeah.
Because I've always said we need to revamp education. The days of memorizing everything in a history book or whatever, you can look that stuff up these days. It's at your fingertips. So, that might help people in your situation as well if they ever revamp education. But that's a story for another day. But, did the doctors tell you that there might be long-term effects when he was going through this, back when he was going through it? Or they may not have known. I don't know.
I don't remember. I mean, I remember everything about that time, but the two things that I remember the most is when they finally told us that he had leukemia. Was if he had leukemia, they wanted him to have the good kind, which I don't know why they said that, because to me that there is no such thing. And then right after he was diagnosed and going through it at 3, they said that he might not be able to have children.
Wow.
At 3, they told me this. At 3. And at 13, I didn't think about it. And 19, I didn't think about it. But he still goes to the doctor every 2 years and is checked.
Yeah. Well, there's, obviously, one, you're alive, but two, it's just there's just so many unknowns with the treatments that people go through on this stuff. And it's even in today, you would think they would know a whole lot more about long-term effects of the treatments, but they just kind of throw it up there, I guess, and say it may or may not happen.
Yeah.
Well, interesting, man. That's been a crazy story. Like I said, I didn't realize you were so young when you had it. So when you said you didn't remember it, I'm like, oh, you were 16, 17. I did a lot of things in my high school days, but I tried to remember some. So, well, that's a crazy story. Anything else that might enlighten people on stuff to know? So he just, the gist of it is a lot of pain in the hips and legs.
Just
and
check
pay
yourself.
attention. Yeah.
Pay attention to stuff like that. My recent doctor visit, they just tell me to do my checks and stuff like that. If I notice any abnormality, go to the doctor and just stay up on your health. That's what they tell me.
But at this point, it's every 2 years you go in and I guess do a blood test, and everything's been clear since then.
Thank God, yes.
Yeah. That's amazing.
And every 5 years they do a big heart test and stuff like that. But
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's an incredible story, I tell you. Because like I said, having kids and seeing them go through stuff is very difficult, and especially not knowing what to do, because there's really nothing you can do but sit and hope that the people you're talking to know what they're doing. So Cozaire was where you all were at?
Mm-hmm. We were at Cozaire. I mean, they were great. I mean, I have no complaints about anything that he went through as far as treatment, because they were on top of it. The doctors, the nurses, the staffing at Cozaire at the time, I mean, they were incredible. But it was just getting to that point, because, if you baby somebody, then you're, being a bad parent. But if you don't, get on them, then you're a bad parent. So it's like, when he was at the worst, it's funny, people's perception and what they think and what they say, but they don't know what you're going through with it.
Yeah.
And what he went through with it.
Yeah. It's so everybody's got an opinion, and at some point as a mom, you get to say, mind your own business. We're handling this for our child the best we can, and we're not taking negative criticism at this point, because people think they're helping, but they're not. It's just crazy different opinions of what people would say. But yeah, we see it all the time. But yeah, that's an incredible story. And did he actually have a bone marrow transplant?
He didn't have to. No, he didn't have anything. What he had, he never came out of remission. He went 18 months without being hospitalized, which is almost unheard of. And he also just had one port in his chest for 3 years, which is also unheard of, which I don't know if you heard him say he has it in a jar in his room.
Somewhere it's in my room.
It's kind of like saving your teeth when they fall out as a kid. It's just keeping it as the memento, huh?
It was actually, I took it in school at topic day
Show
or
and
something
tell.
like that. Show and tell, yeah. I always take it in there, show and tell.
Well, that's
And,
unique.
Yeah, it was very unique.
Did anybody else have one?
No.
Well, that's a good thing.
I was the only one.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
I always tell people it was a blessing to beat it, and it was a curse to get it, but it was also another blessing that was the most curable, the most common. So
Yeah.
I got lucky.
You did, because most people aren't that lucky.
No, there's a couple of them. It's been battling cancer 4 times, 7 times.
That you know of as you got older, I guess you keep up with people.
Yeah, through Camp Quality. I met
Okay.
him through Camp Quality. My first camper, he's been battling 7 times. Was it 7? 7 times with cancer. And my best friend, 4 years, or 4 times in and out of remission. And he's got ALL, acute lymphoblastic leukemia, but it's just a real bad case of it.
Yeah.
So I was blessed.
Do you ever feel guilty? People talk about survivor's guilt. I mean, do you have your friends that you see and you kind of wonder, how did I get so lucky and they haven't?
Yeah, sometimes.
That's a real thing.
So yeah, seeing, well, his name's Matthew. Seeing some of the posts and stuff like that is just awful.
Yeah.
Like one day it'd be great, and the next day it's awful. I'm just like, I wish I could take it and give him a good life, and me take it from him.
Yeah, I think I know who you're talking about. I've watched that journey, and it's been horrible to watch that young man.
Yeah, Matthew Walker.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I know who he. I know who he is. I watched.
that was my first camper.
He's a little
Camp
younger
Quality.
than you, though, isn't he?
Yeah, he was a camper, and I was a chaperone.
Okay.
So it was my first big time. He was a good kid to me, but just sucks what's going through.
Yeah.
I hate it.
Yeah, I hate that. Yeah, like I said, the survivors, guilt is real, and but you got to look at it as the positive side, that at least you made it through it.
Yeah, that's how I look at it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming in today. This has been very educational, probably one of the most educational ones we've had so far, just hearing the actual story from the beginning to the end. And just hearing what you went through, it's just incredible. I mean, as far as the insurance and stuff, did you all have insurance for that kind of thing?
Well, we did at the time where I worked. It was still awful. I mean, because my husband and I both, Noah's dad, we both worked, but he couldn't be alone in the hospital. So somebody had to be there. And when he had a treatment, somebody had to take him. And when he had spinal, somebody had to take him. And I mean, when you're off that much, I mean, I was very fortunate when he was diagnosed until probably around August or about October, I was able to be with him. But then you have to find childcare, and you have to find, he couldn't be around anybody. I mean, we couldn't be around family. We couldn't be around, I mean, it was pretty awful. We were very limited on who could be around us. So then you were limited on who could help you, but then you're down a paycheck. We struggled in the beginning. The neighbors helped us out tremendously, and different friends and family helped us because we couldn't work. I mean, and somebody had to watch him. So my mother-in-law stepped in.
If it wasn't for her and my mom and dad, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
That's a promise.
Yeah.
I
don't think people realize the army that it takes to help someone in your situation. And it's sad to think that there's people out there that don't have anybody to help them. And it breaks my heart just to think of what situations that they're in, getting to and from treatments and stuff like that. But it's, that's the eye-opening thing. And before my mom died, I didn't know that was a problem. I had no clue. And but the story, luckily you had such a good group of people that was willing to help you out.
I was very fortunate for that.
Yeah.
The insurance part, I think, was the worst. And a lot of people to this day didn't know. I mean, they will know now, but my insurance was filed. But because Tony's birthday was before mine, his was primary. Well, his didn't pay like mine. So we were stuck with just an obscene amount of bills. And then here we are. We can't work, or we were trying to work, and then we're trying to get our sick child to chemo treatments, and we're getting calls for, I mean, it was just, in some of the medicine. I remember one time I went to get his medicine, and it was like $300. I didn't have $300, and I was just crying, sitting in the drive-thru, and I just looked at the lady and I said, I don't have that. And I think about what people go through. And that was just one time in like a 3-year period of time. It's just the financial part of it. I took that burden on. No one never knew about it, and a lot of people never knew about it. But that part of it, what you do, Mike, and to help people, you can't imagine. That is the biggest burden off people's shoulders that you can ever imagine.
Well, I wish we could do more, but I want to paint a picture for people watching right now. So you're sitting in the drive-thru at the pharmacy. The tech tells you it's $300, holding it up at the window saying this could help your child, $300. And you're sitting in the drive-thru crying because you don't have $300 to save your child's life. It's inhumane and morally wrong in the richest country in the world for you to have to sit there and be stressed about $300 to save your child's life. Think about that. Think about that, people. It makes me so sick that this is the world that we're living in right now. I mean, so what did you do? Did you open up another credit card and pay for it? I mean, how did you handle that kind of thing?
I could not. I was so upset because I couldn't get the medicine. She said, ma'am, do you need to pull around? Do you need to come in? And I was like, well,
here, take it anyway. We'll write it off. It's pull around and think about how you're going to pay for it.
Pretty much. Yeah. So we had to, at that particular moment, at that particular day, we had to borrow money from my mother-in-law who, we still had paychecks coming in, but I didn't have an extra $300. But he had been sick, and he had came home from the one and only time he'd been in the hospital. He was very healthy. thank God, he was very healthy from the time he was diagnosed until the time he was done. He really wasn't ill. But this one particular time, he had to come home, but he had to have medicine at home. He had to have, we had to have a nurse come out. So we had to have medicines for vials for them to put in his port. And I mean, yeah, it was like $370. I literally I couldn't, my husband had to go back. I couldn't even go in. I was so
And
upset.
we wonder why people get mad and problems happen.
Yep.
You know, the wrong person would have went in that room and probably yanked the medicine out of the person's hand and caused a scene. You're trying to save your kid's life, and they're holding it. I mean, I'm picturing a cartoon of a person dangling medicine in front of somebody that could save your child's life, and they're not going to give it to you until we hand you some green paper.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's green paper. It means nothing if you take away, the value of money. Money is really the root of all evil, and
Yes,
it
it
just
is.
drives me crazy. It's not right in this world. I love arguing with people that say, "Oh, and they have to treat you." No, they don't. They don't have to treat you. They have to comfort you. If you're in pain, they will give you pain medication, but they don't have to save your life. And that's what people don't understand. It's a complete misnomer in this world that they don't have to give you the medicine that's going to save your life if you can't pay for it.
Nope.
And I don't know. I get really mad about that. But we need more people getting mad. I'm hoping to be in Frankfurt here maybe next year talking about this scenario, and I would love to have that conversation with those people. And we'll
Absolutely.
get you a day off, because I want them to paint that picture in their head and see how they would handle it.
Until I just told you that, no one knew that story but my husband and I and my mother-in-law.
Yeah, that just gives me cold chills to the point where I'm livid when I hear that kind of thing. So, well, anything else about the journey that you all went to? I'm glad we got to that point, because it's just incredible for people to hear that. And I hope everybody hears what that last part of it was. So, well, thank you all so much for coming in today. Again, eye-opening. We may check back in one day, and if something else comes up that you remember about the journey, we would love to talk about it and let people know what really happens in today's world with people who are sick.
Mike, thank you for this time.
I say thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thank you all. I'm sure we'll see you at the lake here soon.
I'll see you around. I promise.
If you would like to help Shirley's Way and help people who have medicine dangled in front of them because they can't afford it, go to shirleysway.org and sign up to be a $10 monthly donor. We have all kinds of raffles. We started digital raffles to help raise money, and we've given away a lot of money to patients in need. So please head out to shirleysway.org today and set up a $10 monthly donation. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.